The front doors open, and the full length of Daithì fills the frame. He leans against the door jamb, soaking in the unexpected heat from the autumn sunshine. The mid-morning brightness splits the surface of the bay into shards of light below the house, dazzling Saoirse for a moment as she pulls the car between the gate piers, past the slate sign Daithì has fastened to the wall. Here, in their remote corner of Donegal, houses have no numbers, only names. Teach Cuan na Muilta Móra. Hiya, I'm Orla. Thank you for clicking into the video. Today I'm going to review Saoirse by Charleen Hurtubise. We picked this book up for our book club, and we had the honour of Charleen attending our inaugural meeting where we discussed Saoirse, and we got to ask her some questions about her writing process and her inspirations and motivations, which was wonderful. Saoirse was published in February 2026, so it is quite a new release. As you can see, it's not a huge book. Now that's coming from somebody who reads a lot of fantasy, where they're usually about 400 pages. This one is only about 240. When I say I read it in a day, I'm not exaggerating. I just couldn't put it down. I think I started reading it Thursday morning, and by Friday lunchtime I had it finished. So, I mean, that's probably a spoiler for the review, but I did really enjoy this book. It has 3.97 stars on Goodreads. Personally, I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, but I think 3.97 is probably a fair rating. And yeah, I'm just going to read the blurb on the back of the book to get us a little bit of a flavour of what the story is about, and then I'll read my notes on the author and the premise of the book and the description. This is going to be a spoiler-free review as best I can. I will be describing some of the opening chapters in a little bit of detail, but I'm going to try really hard not to spoil any of the story for you, because it is one of those stories where as you're reading it, you're peeling off the layers to get to the center of what's going on, what's happening with the characters, and why are things playing out in the way that they're playing out. So the blurb on the back is, in the wilds of Donegal in 1999, Saoirse appears to have everything she ever wanted. A tender husband, 2 beloved daughters, and an idyllic life devoted to her art. Her family is the heart of her work, and in them she has found the safety and belonging she once only dreamed of. She tends not to talk about her past, but now her secrets are about to be revealed, putting their future in danger. Exploring the fine line between dishonesty and reinvention, Saoirse is a gripping, emotionally complex portrait of love, heartbreak, and the price of freedom. So, for those of you watching who do not know Irish, Saoirse is a female name that is freedom. And I couldn't agree more with the main character being called Saoirse, with the story being called Saoirse. This is truly a story of finding freedom from your circumstances, finding the opportunity to create the life that you want for yourself, regardless of your past, regardless of what happened. The author, Charleen, is American, but she's been living in Ireland over 25 years, so she is essentially a local at this point. She lives in Dublin but travels to Donegal quite a bit, and that's really reflected in her novel. Her descriptions of the countryside, of the scenery, of the different locations are just so spot on. When you're reading them, especially if you visited these places, you just can feel yourself there. You're visualizing yourself standing there next to the characters, seeing what they're seeing, experiencing what they're experiencing, which is wonderful. Her first novel was The Polite Art of Drowning, and that was released in the UK and Ireland. So Saoirse is her second novel, but it is also her US debut. And what a debut, to be honest. So, the general premise of the book, without going into too many details or spoiling it too much, I'll just describe the first couple of chapters and then I'll leave it up to you to decide if that's something that you want to continue reading. The story begins in October 1999, so you would have heard me reading some of the opening lines there. It's set in Donegal when the story begins. We're in Donegal in October 1999. And Saoirse has returned home from a routine medical appointment with her infant daughter, Eloise. And she's sitting in the car and she's looking at the beautiful house that she lives in with her husband and her other daughter, Leah. And she is reflecting on how Daithì has become a muse for her. And she's kind of scrambling around the car to find a piece of charcoal and a scrap of paper so she can sketch the image that she's seeing of him when she arrives, because she just finds him so inspiring and inspiring towards her artwork. She's also reflecting on how she's looking forward to create her next collection of art. So we learn that she is a pretty successful artist in Ireland. She has an exhibition that's opening at a really prestigious art gallery in Dublin, and the exhibition that is being displayed there is what she would consider her dark period, and she's really looking forward to her next collection being happier and being more focused on her family and her life with Daithì and Eloise and Leah. The curator of the exhibit wants Saoirse to write more detailed descriptive titles of her artwork. So Saoirse has handed all of her pieces over to the curator and they're all labelled Gan Anam, which means without a name. And the curator is basically saying, look, if you can't give me a description of the piece, could you at the very least give me a descriptive title, so that people can get a bit of an idea of the story that you're trying to tell with your work. And we'll see as the story goes on that Saoirse doesn't quite deliver on either of those requests to the curator. So her moment of peace is interrupted when she sees and realises that Daithì should be at work by now and her daughter Leah should be dropped off to school by now, and she's worried that they're home when they shouldn't be, and she's wondering what's happened. Has something gone wrong? We see in the narrative that her mind immediately goes to, oh my god, he knows, I've given myself away. It's all written in third person, but you still get an insight into her thoughts and into her feelings, and she's telling us immediately that she has some sort of secret that she's hiding. And she's not only hiding it from the general public, but she's also hiding it from her husband and from her daughter. And she is terrified of him finding this out. And we also learn that her older daughter Leah is not Daithì's biological daughter. So she calls him Daithì, which is an affectionate term for Daithì, I imagine. And we learn that every 2 weeks Daithì and Saoirse have to bring Leah up to Dublin to spend the weekend with her biological father, who was called Paul. We do know that Eloise, well, we presume that Eloise is Saoirse and Daithì's child, because the way they talk about it is that he treats both daughters equally, treats them both the same, he loves them both the same. So knowing that Leah has to go to Dublin every 2 weeks to spend time with her father, it does hint that there's something in the background there that's not aligning with the beautiful, perfect image that we're greeted with at the beginning. We go from, oh, this is my perfect house, my perfect husband, my perfect family, but oh, there's something else here going on. But Daithì knows about this. This isn't a secret that Leah is a child from a previous relationship that Saoirse had. So then we're left wondering, well, what is the secret? Because often in stories like that, just a past relationship or a child from a past relationship is the big secret. So we're wondering, what is Saoirse hiding? Especially given that this was 1990s Ireland, where divorce wasn't common, children out of wedlock wasn't common, blended families really not common. So we're left wondering, what is Saoirse hiding? We learn that the reason Daithì and Leah are still at home and not at work or school is because they want to celebrate Saoirse. She's after winning this really, really prestigious award that comes with a substantial cash prize. It's the kind of award where the artist doesn't nominate themselves. They either get recommended by someone else, or the committee deciding who wins the award saw their art in the wild, for lack of a better term, and determined that they were worthy of this prize. So it's a huge, huge boost for her career. It's a fabulous opportunity, but the whole time it's kind of overshadowed with a darkness, a dullness. Saoirse doesn't seem to be as exuberant about winning this award as you would imagine. We are told that she's won. We're told the details of this award from an article in a newspaper, and it describes her career, the significance of the prize, and her upcoming exhibition in Dublin. The article ends with, Miss Byrne has established a reputation for maintaining deliberate silence about her work and is generally unavailable for interview or comment. Which I think it just strengthens the idea of there's something that this woman doesn't want anyone to know, and her way of protecting herself is just by completely isolating herself from any opportunities to give herself away, as she said earlier on in the chapter. In chapter 2, we jump back from 1999 to 1990, so we go back about 10 years, and we have an unnamed woman who is boarding a flight from Boston to Dublin. She arrives on the plane, and there's a stranger sitting in her seat, and she doesn't seem to have the confidence or the ability to ask him to leave, to say, oh, that's my seat, could you please move? And she ends up just standing in the aisle, fidgeting with her boarding pass, until the man voluntarily says, oh, is this your seat? Let me move. From the get-go, this guy kind of gives you the ick. I don't know a better way to describe it. But his interactions with this woman are nearly too sweet to be wholesome, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I felt. I'll read a brief description here. Sorry, he apologizes. He is compact, dressed tidily, a white shirt with sleeves pulled up to his elbows. His sport coat hangs on the button knob in front of his seat. He stands out into the aisle, making space for her to pass. Take the window seat. He gestures as though his act is somehow what she desires, a sacrifice he will make for her, a stranger. So from the initial reading, it doesn't sound too bad. You're like, oh, maybe, he's just friendly, and he's maybe a little bit oblivious that he's sitting in a seat that's not his own. But as the chapter goes on, there's just more and more about him that, for me anyway, made him feel a little bit off-putting. He seemed overly involved in her, and overly involved in getting her settled on the plane and getting her comfortable, offering the window seat, even though the window seat was already hers. That was the seat that she had booked, and presenting it like this great kindness. He also has a lot of opinions on her bags. She wants to just shove it under the seat in front of her, and he's offering a lot of opinions about how, oh, the bag won't fit, you need to store it in the overhead, let me do that for you, let me help you, and oh, don't forget to put your seatbelt on before the plane takes off. And it's all a bit infantilizing, I think, is probably the word. I didn't It didn't occur to me that it was infantilizing as I was reading it. As I was reading it, I just thought, like, gosh, he's a bit intrusive. But now that I'm saying it out loud, it does feel very infantilizing. It's like how a parent would fuss over a child when they're taking them on an airplane for the first time. And he does even go as far as asking her, oh, is this your first flight? And she kind of non-committally just doesn't answer the question. It kind of, she indicates that it is, but we don't know for sure. Like, we're definitely told that the woman resents all of his intrusions on her personal space and her personal freedoms. She just wants to be left alone to get on with it, and this man is just determined to acquaint himself with her during the flight. During this chapter, we learn that she's after boarding the plane with a passport that isn't hers. The name on the passport is Sarah Walsh, and she's hoping that once she gets to border control in Ireland, because she's travelling on an Irish passport, nobody will answer too many questions and they'll just wave her through and let her enter the country. She alludes to this being one of many felonies that she has committed in the past. So you're really wondering, like, who is this woman? What has she done in the past? Why is she travelling to Ireland on a fake passport? What is going on here? And this man, we learn his name is Paul, is just determined to talk to her. As the plane takes off, so she's introduced herself to Paul as Sarah, which is the name of the passport. And as the plane takes off, Sarah's reflecting on her sister Leah, who she's left behind with a stranger. So she's remembering how her sister looked sprawled out fast asleep in the back seat of the car, and she's kind of believing that by leaving her sister in the care of this stranger, it's going to keep her sister safe. And we don't know who this stranger is. We don't know if they're just a stranger to Leah or if they're a stranger to Sarah as well. But all we know is Sarah is 100% running away from something, and in order to keep her sister safe, she believes that they have to be separated from each other, which is quite sad. Paul continues to make conversation with Sarah, and she kind of acquiesces in the end, and they have a bit of back and forth. Paul has gotten them some wine to drink during their flight, and he questions her age and whether or not it's legal for her to drink it. So that lets us know that Sarah is quite young, that the legal drinking age in Ireland is 18, and for him to be looking at her and saying, are you old enough to drink? It does make you wonder, like, does she look younger than 18? So Sarah lies to him and tells him that she's 20, which is the age of the person whose passport she's using. And we find out that Paul is a bit of an oversharer. So he's telling her all about his failed medical fellowship. He was engaged to an American girl while he was in Boston applying for the fellowship, and that that engagement ended, and that his mother is quite happy that the relationship has ended because she didn't approve of him marrying an American girl. And then eventually Paul falls asleep. I mean, it's a 5.5-hour flight from Boston to Dublin, so Paul closes his eyes, falls asleep, and Sarah finds herself missing his company, which I think can often be the case if you're travelling alone and you strike up a conversation with somebody. Sometimes you're in the mood for it and sometimes you're not. But Sarah really comes across as quite an isolated, lonely person. It's hinted that some of that isolation is self-induced. It talks about her wishing she had bought a book at the airport so she doesn't have to talk to Paul, and just being reluctant to answer his questions. But I think the self-isolation and then feeling lonely as a result of it can go hand in hand, but it can also be separate separate entities. You could be isolating yourself because you feel like that's the safest thing to do, but you're still going to feel lonely from it. The final chapter I'm going to summarize is chapter 3. So this chapter, we are brought back to 1999, and Saoirse is in the art gallery and she's perusing her exhibits that the curator, or her artwork that the curator has hung for the exhibition. She has quite an emotional response to seeing her paintings all presented together as one story, and it's not a positive experience. You would imagine that this is a huge achievement for her. If she's an artist, she's been working for a long time, she's won various awards and had smaller exhibits in the run up to this, but this is like, at the moment, this is the pinnacle of her career. So she should be deliriously happy. She should be so excited and shouting it from the rooftops. But we see here that she's not enjoying the success the way you'd expect her to be. So it says, she shouldn't have let her friend Catherine talk her into this. She should have painted, destroyed, painted them again. A therapy of sorts, but they do not belong here on view. The panic wells up again. A vertiginous sensation enters her head. She closes her eyes, breathes in slowly, but the parquet floor sways, and she sits down in the middle of the room on a wooden bench that reminds her of an ornate pew. Her eye moves immediately to the first painting, her earliest memory displayed there for all to see. So here Charleen Hurtubise does something really, really interesting with the narrative. It switches from third person to first person, and it's presented like the description of artwork in a gallery. So we're told the painting's name is Lavender, the medium is Oil on Board, and then the description that accompanies it is Saoirse's memory. So she says here it's her earliest memory out on display, and we get to learn what that memory is through Saoirse's eyes. So it switches to first person, and the author does this 8 times throughout the book. So there's one for each painting on display in the exhibition, and each time we learn more and more about Saoirse, about her past, why she's keeping it a secret from her husband. Sorry, I nearly spoiled something there, but I caught myself. So the memory itself is a young child who's 3, and she's being dropped off in this strange house, and it's the middle of the night. So her mother has brought her to this place, and she falls asleep, and when she wakes up, her mother is gone. So her mother has left her in this strange house with people she doesn't know. She gathers from photos around the house that these people are her mother's parents, so they're her maternal grandparents, and there's an older lady who she calls Mama and an older man who she calls Papa. They speak a language that is unfamiliar to her, but then they can also switch to English. But she says that when they switch to English, it doesn't make any difference because they've such a strong accent. She finds it really hard to understand them. So you can just imagine, like, this poor 3-year-old child has been abandoned in a strange place with strange people, doesn't understand what's going on. Like, it must just be truly terrifying for her. Like, your heart really, really breaks for her. After a little while, her mother does return, and she has brought a man called Lou with her. So when her mother returns, we learn that the child's name is Sarah. So given that this is Saoirse's memory, we know, okay, so at some point Saoirse was called Sarah, and it makes you wonder, you know, what's the connection there between the other woman called Sarah. The man that her mother has brought with her is called Lou, and immediately Saoirse gets bad feelings about Lou. She feels like he's a very unkind person, he's quite cold, he doesn't seem to be interested in her at all. then there's an argument between the mam and Lou and Mama, where her mother wants to take her away, but Mama is begging her not to. She wants to keep Sarah slash Saoirse in the house with her, and ultimately, Sarah leaves with her mother and with Lou, and they drive off into the night. Like, it's really, really setting up for a pretty dark childhood, in my opinion. I mean, a story that has scenes like that at the beginning is not setting itself up for a particularly pleasant childhood. You can see that Sarah has had a lot of instability and a lot of moments where things aren't settled. She's being bounced around and dragged places in the middle of the night. Like, again, a childhood that is going to be like happy and stable and safe is not one where you get dumped at a house in the middle of the night with people that you don't know. So immediately you're kind of being able to fill in a couple of gaps here with Sarah slash Saoirse's past. By looking at Lou and seeing him as a really unkind man, it starts, I mean, for me, it got my heckles up. For a young child to look at a grown man and say, oh, he looks really unkind, it gets my heckles up, and it makes me start to worry that Lou is not a safe person for Sarah to be around, or at the very least, he is not a man that's going to make her feel happy. So the novel continues like this, where the narrative switches between the present, which is the year 1999, and then it will go back to the past. So we're following Sarah a bit more in 1990, and then throughout it we have the painting descriptions scattered through, where we get more of Saoirse's memories that inspires the paintings. Overall, I think it's a really fantastically written story. As I mentioned before, I flew through it. I couldn't put it down. It was a really easy book to read in terms of the narrative was easy to digest, even though there were times when I found it really, really difficult to read, because there were moments that just weren't pleasant. Just as a trigger warning, if you are going to read this book, there are scenes of sexual assault. There's scenes where there is domestic violence and child neglect as well. So those particular scenes were really, really hard to read, which I think is a testament to how well they were written, that you were just there with the character experiencing what they're experiencing. I felt it was a really fresh commentary on what life was like in Ireland in the 90s, especially for women who were very easily trapped by their circumstances. As I mentioned before, divorce wasn't common. Planned parenthood, or what's the word? Like family planning was still pretty much non-existent. Like contraceptives had only been legal for a short while at that point, like maybe 5 years. So if a woman became pregnant and she was in a marriage where the man was not somebody that she wanted to stay married to, even though some of it was legal, like getting a divorce was legal, the attitude at the time, depending on your family and your community, it could have been very different. And we do see that in Saoirse. We see that in the book, where there's one of the characters is trying to escape an unhappy situation, and they're trapped, and there's no real ways of getting around it, which it's a pretty crucial part of the story. So I don't want to go into too many details and spoil it for you. I felt that the way the story was told, where we had the present mixed in with the past and then mixed in with those memories told through the painting descriptions was excellent, because as we learned more through the memories, and we learned more about the experiences that led up to present day, the more we felt the tension rising in present day. And we just got really, well, I say we the readers, me personally, felt the tension rising and felt the fear of being discovered, and like, what is Saoirse's secret? What's going to happen when it gets discovered? Whatever it is, she is really, really scared, and she feels like she has no one to turn to for help. So it really was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed that. The descriptions of Ireland in this book were stunning. I forgot to say at the beginning that the author is an artist as well as a writer. So you really see that artist's eye in describing some of the more wild scenery in Donegal versus the more urban scenery in Dublin. And then there's a scene where they're on a beach in Wicklow, and you're there. You're reading it and you're there, and you're feeling the sand between your toes, and you're feeling the spray on your face, and it's just wonderful. I really, really enjoyed it. So that is my review of Saoirse. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting, and maybe it even inspired you to pick it up and have a read. I'm hoping to do a few more of these reviews, and I will also be including some videos of my own writing journey as I progress from outlining to drafting and so on. So I hope you'll stick around and we can go through this together. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.